Once upon a time, in an African village, there lived a king who lived a very fake life. He would put all these sculptures around his buildings, his surroundings. Every house he built, he put those scary things you are seeing just to make people feel that he was into a cult or some kind of spiritual organization, so that people would be scared of his girls. He had a lot of girls who later grew into marriageable age. But down the road, as the story progresses, I would let you know all that happened to all these girls. They were up to marriageable ages, but because of these different sculptures at the back of his house, beside his house, the back and front gate, a lot of suitors were scared to approach his girls. In fact, they were never seen outside. Their own relations would not even visit them for anything, because everybody saw them as though they had spiritual powers. And because he was a king, it was easy for them to believe. And this is why they say, do not live a fake life, just be who you are. But I don't know what the king was afraid of that made him do all of this. But inside their house, there was nothing like worshiping any idol. They didn't believe in any other idol, but they believed in God. But this was what the king did. And that is why they say, dress as you want to be addressed, because nobody wants to know your intent or what is in your heart. Is what they see you look like or appear like that they follow. So this king was, every house he built, he kept this there. And it was so difficult for people to come seeking his daughter's hands in marriage. The funny thing is that this king had only daughters. And of course, no matter how much you protect your daughters, no matter how much you want to keep them away from the public, they will have to marry someday, right? So these were the scary things people saw around this man's house. And they never came close to the house, because they were feeling that if all the houses this man had built, he's using this, he definitely belonged to a cult. But the cult he belonged to was what people didn't know about. So a lot of people stayed away because they didn't want to be involved in this kind of thing, because they didn't understand better. Or rather, the man was faking a life he didn't have, or he wasn't living, just to protect his daughters. Nobody will know why he's trying so much to protect his daughters. Maybe he had a sibling down the road that was they took advantage of, or maybe somebody close to him, and he decided that when he has his own children, he will protect them at all costs. But this was the only way this man could protect them, and this was how he built all his houses, putting these scary sculptures around the house. He had about 6 gates surrounding his house, and all were designed like this in different sculptures, scary ones at that. So a lot of men took it that there was no need coming to seek his daughter's hands. They all knew he had daughters, but how to even get married to these daughters was something that took a long time, because nobody was ready to deal with this kind of issues. They were so scared. The villagers were scared. The strangers that visited the village were scared, because the point is, why should people even wanted to come around to find out why he had all these sculptures around this building? Nobody was bold enough to do it. So it was just a thing that people talked about on the streets, by the streams, the walkways, different, that the by the village squares, they had all these conversations. So one of the days, somebody was now bold to come ask the daughter's hand in marriage. And at this point, the person who was coming to ask the daughter's hand in marriage did not even know which of the daughters he was getting married to, because obviously his daughters don't come out. They don't even go out. They don't visit anybody. He didn't know who he was coming to marry. So he took a bold step and came to meet the king. And when he got to the king's palace, they had a lot of people standing. And he walked up to the king and told the king why he was there. They opened the gate. You can imagine that in that village, nobody knew how beautiful the king's palace was looking. They never knew, because they don't go in there. And after that, it was now time for them to cross the sea. Because the man who came to visit the king's daughter decided to take the queen to his own village and then they met this ocean. And the funny thing is, because she has never seen an ocean, she didn't know how it was. She was now scared. The guy now insisted that she had to cross because he went through a lot to go to see her own parents. So he needed her to come visit his own parents. At this point, he had given her the description. She was with, you can see with the light up here, she was with her, bodyguards, and they needed to shine the light. So the king heard that the daughter was not able to cross, and the king held a meeting with all the villagers, asking them what could have been the problem. The villagers were like, this is the first time the king is calling us to meet like this. It's never happened. It has never happened. If he wants to pass a message across, he will usually send his guard to come out of the palace. He doesn't hold meetings in the palace. So you can see a lot of the people that came with their horses and all stayed at bay. They were listening to the king to hear why he called them. So the daughter, because she couldn't cross, she went out to a quiet place to find out what the problem is. Why is her life like this? After contemplating and wondering why her life was like this, she was imagining, why would the father even do a thing like this, causing them more harm? Because right now, the father built a world around them, and it was faking the life he was not living, because he was not into fetish things. So why did he have to put all those things? Because it was when the daughters came out trying to find their way, that was when they understood that what the father was doing was not going to help them. And that was bad. So the daughter came back again. This time, the river, and it was now like a ravine. It wasn't something that they could even cross with a boat. So she stood there, watched everything that was going on, and she was not happy. You can see she was not happy. She was wondering, what is it that our father had put us into? We are a lot of girls in the house, and nobody can come asking our hand in marriage because of the fake life my father had lived all the while. The next time she went again, this time close to the river, a frog had to be on her body. And she took all of this thinking that with this, it would be easy for her to cross the river. Of course, the man who was in charge, who was ready to marry her, was also making sacrifices and thinking that she should also make sacrifices so that they will know that they're on the same slate. He didn't want to marry someone who didn't feel the way he felt for her. And then he watched everything she was going through. It wasn't like, so she went through all of this. Then the next day she came back again, and she still had another frog, greeting her. But she didn't find it funny, like she didn't find it scary or anything, because she felt that maybe with all of this, the other guy, who is also a king's son, who did not even introduce himself as a king's son, will also see that she's trying her best. At this point, another frog was with her and stayed with her through the period she waited. You can see she's gazing at that place to see what will really happen to her, what can change to make her cross to the other side, to prove her love to that man. And then they eventually got married and had a child, and their mother came out to visit. And this was the first time the queen was leaving the palace to visit after their daughter's marriage, because she eventually got married to the guy, and the queen visited, and they are to see her beautiful granddaughter, who was already grown at the time she eventually left the palace to come see her daughter. So it wasn't a funny thing. And the other sisters decided to now live their life. One other one got married, also had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And she decided that she'll be going out a lot with her children. And that was why they went to the mall. They decided to take some pictures. Things became better. They became happier together as a family than they were. And after this time, it was easy for the parents to visit their own grandparents, to visit the king. I don't know if you understand. The children's parents, who were the grandparents, it was not easy for them to visit the king. The king was now, they ate together. Things were now easier. And one of their daughters, who had never gone out, decided to now live among people, animals, thinking about things, wondering why. So this is how beautiful the world has been. And the father never allowed them to gain that opportunity. So she sat among human beings, among animals. She thought a lot, because at this time she didn't know how beautiful, before this time she didn't know how beautiful the world was. It was so sweet to her to meet that she could actually even relate with people and animals. And because they never had this opportunity, they didn't even know that these animals, some of them were dangerous, but she still stayed. So it was easy for them to now visit their grandparents. They were able to eat together. They were happier together. Things were a lot easier than it was before, where their grandparents were not allowed. Not that they were not allowed to visit. They couldn't really visit much because that access wasn't there. They didn't have the access to have such visitations and all. And everything the villagers felt about the king, they went back to their parent, the king's parent, to talk about it. They went back to the queen's parent to talk about it. So they were also not happy. So now you could see that after the first daughter's marriage, everything became open. People, it was easy for people to access them. It was easy for them to visit their cousins, their uncles, to dine together, eat together. Life was more relatable now. So, and the story behind this is, do not live a fake life. Do not live a life you are not, because you are trying to prove a point to the public, because it gives a different interpretation of who you are not. So you can see how happy they are now as a family. They could visit. I'm sure they will be discussing about all the years, the times they were hidden, they were being, they were being in closed doors, trying to protect their daughters. But a lot of people were of the opinion that they don't think it was just their daughters they were trying to protect, that they felt there were some superpowers they had. But that wasn't the case. It's not like they had superpowers. You can see that they are so happy. They didn't have any superpowers. They were just trying to protect their children. And the king was becoming older, before he could, when he saw his parents, he couldn't believe his parents were now this old, because he was getting older, keeping his children in closed doors and not wanting them to come out because of the perception that men would take advantage of them. So another of his daughter got married, because she had traveled out now, and she met a very young guy who was interested in her. And because she was naive, the guy was now teaching her a lot of things, what she would do to, in relationship, because she had never been in one. So everybody in that place, they sat, because it was, and they had a dinner together. There's people were just staring at them because it was strange. She may have done things that they were wondering, who is this one? Of course, because she has never really had that opportunity. And the man's other daughter decided to travel more. She traveled a lot. She became a baddie. For those of you who don't know what a baddie is, they are the new generation who dress the way they dress and think the way they think and all of that, who want quick fixes, who don't want to suffer, who don't want to do anything that other people did. They don't want to follow the old ways. So they are the baddies. So the daughter traveled a lot because she didn't even have an opportunity. So she began to make friends who now encouraged her. She began to travel a lot. She had visas to different countries. She had different countries' passports. It was not a funny thing, but she had to do what she had to do. She traveled a lot, toured the world, because she didn't understand how beautiful the world was while she was in that palace. They had everything they needed in the palace, but they couldn't go out because of the fear their father had for them. So the daughter traveled a lot. You can see that she even sat on her suitcase because she didn't even understand. She was wondering, is this how the world is? And my father was keeping me in that place. So they found their own love for everything they needed to do. It was easy for them to marry. It was easy for them to allow their children come out, because they needed to change the narrative of being locked up in that place. You see, and that is why you see that a lot of women enter into marriages with insecurity, because their parents locked them up and never told them. You see, it's one thing to tell a child, do not have an affair with a man. It's another thing to be calm about protecting them. Do not go to the extreme so that your children will not remain unmarried, or because there are a lot of men whose daughters are now 35, 40 years in the African setting and they are not married because they overprotected them without giving them the sex education they needed. They would have, that's all they needed. Just give them the education so that they don't now go into the wrong hands, because now they are looking for love. They are trying to find love to fit into. So they go into abusive relationships because they are trying to fit into standards that they were not taught. They are trying to make the man love them. In this one, she got an American visa, passport and visa. Yeah. At the end of the day, she left. So all of these things still boils down. The storyline is, when you are teaching your children what to do and what not to do, teach them the right way. Do not use so difficult measures to do it, such that they will now become scared to live their life. So it's a lesson for every parent watching this. Do not live a fake life. Do not live a life that will put your children in danger. Ensure that you live a life that makes it easy for your children to adapt to the society and make friends with other people, not to be scared or living in fear. So that was all that happened. The daughters were now free to do what they wanted to do. Those who were traveling were able to travel. Those who got married after that got married. So a lot of men were now on that event of the first daughter's marriage. It was not easy for these other daughters to get married, or for suitors who came for the event to see her, to see the other daughters, and they got married. And one of the daughters now decided to teach her own child how to pray. So they woke up every morning and prayed. And they didn't want to live the kind of life their father put them through. They prayed a lot. They were able to go to a church. They now understood that there was something called a church. So they prayed a lot. It was easier for her to do stuff with the daughter, and that was it. So it was easy that way. And one other of his daughters got married also and had a baby, and they were able to go out more often, shared memories in the park with his daughter. And everything was cool because they now had the opportunity to make friends. They now had the opportunity to dress well. They now had opportunities to make fabrics, because there they were not. Now the other daughter was able to get married also. And now she had a daughter, a beautiful one, who was trying to, navigate her feelings. And you can see she's putting her finger in a burning flame, because children do not understand that these things can hurt them until they really get hurt. So thank you for watching this video. We'll bring you more African tales as time goes.